homework and virtual homework to do tonight. So uh, uh, it sounds like none of you have met Matt before, but Matt, we're so happy to have Matt with us tonight. Matt played at the University of Pennsylvania at the Division I college level, was an All-American there, had an extremely impressive career while there, and played for the U.S. national team, was a standout on that team, and currently plays for the PLL Archers, and is a standout player there. He and Kyle Harrison and Tom Schreiber delivered a great clinic back in the winter time, and it went so well that Matt was really, when we reached out to Matt to see if he might join us tonight, he was generous with his time, and so I'll leave it to you, Matt, to take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Shep. That was a pretty flattering introduction in terms of my lacrosse career, but I wanted to start out just by saying that one of the reasons why I enjoyed the clinic that we came to up in the Bronx was or Harlem, the Bronx, I forget where it was, but was that I was not really a standout player at your guys' age, and it took me a little bit longer to really ever get a grasp of the game of lacrosse. And I know for a lot of you guys, like, it was a struggle. I kind of like grew fast, and the game of lacrosse is like very finesse oriented, right? It's a lot of skill that goes into it, and at first it's like not really that much fun if you're not really that capable of catching and throwing and doing things at a high level. It can be really frustrating. And so that's why I always enjoy doing clinics and stuff, especially in areas like near where I grew up, just because I too like was a beginner at one point. And I think that's important for all you guys to remember, is that everybody who you see playing in the PLL games or US or Division I, they all started out at some point and they couldn't catch and throw or pick up a ground ball. So one of the cooler things about the sport of lacrosse, in my opinion, is that you can really get good really quickly just by putting time in on your own, which is kind of a cool situation that we're all in now, where, like, you know, you can't really become that much better of a football player right now, or a soccer player, or baseball, or whatever. But all it takes is a ball, a stick, and a wall, and you guys can get like loads better really quickly throughout all of this. So just wanted to start off by saying that. I appreciate Shep's introduction, but I had a humble start to my lacrosse career, and I was certainly no blue chip prospect at any point in high school. So so with that said, I'll give you guys a quick background of kind of my growing up, start to lacrosse, and high school, college, to where I am today. So I grew up in Jersey, not that far from where you guys are at, about a half an hour outside of the city, in a town called Glen Ridge, which is kind of near Newark for any of you guys. And I played for like a small public high school there, Glen Ridge High School, and we were all right. We were not that great of a team, and I wasn't that great of a lacrosse player, but I just enjoyed the heck out of the sport and kept playing it. And like I said, I found that, like, it's a game that you can get a lot better at just on your own. And so I kind of just enjoyed the wall and enjoyed shooting and doing all that stuff on my own, and found myself getting better and better each year, and got to the point where I decided I wanted to keep playing in college. And I was fortunate enough, kind of worked hard in school, and got the opportunity to play at UPenn, where we had some pretty good seasons, won the Ivy League one year, and had an awesome time. And then kind of towards the end of college, it was the same thing, where I was like, you know, I think I'm good enough to play professionally and beyond college, but I'm not really sure. But most of all, like, I just wasn't ready to stop playing. Like, I was having so much fun that I just wasn't gonna put my stick down forever. So I figured I'd give it a shot, trained really hard, went to training camp with the Ohio Machine at the time, which was the Major League Lacrosse. Made the team and started playing really well, and just found myself continuing to get better and better. So that's the other thing that I like about lacrosse is there's really like no ceiling for how good you can get. If you want to just keep putting the work in, you can get better and better. Whereas like, you know, football, it's like if you don't run a 4.40, you're probably not going to play in the NFL. Like lacrosse, it's like you can just keep building on your skills. It's so skill oriented that you can keep getting better and better on your own. And really the ceiling is whatever you make it. So if you want to keep working hard, you're just going to keep getting better. So I started to play professionally, started to have success. The game became more fun. I bought in even more. And then I think that like, if you really asked any of my teammates, like, they had no idea that I would be as good as I am now, like when I first started out professionally. And that was kind of the same as college. Like my freshman year, I think my teammates thought I was like, you know, so barely on the team. My senior year, one of the better players. And so it's like, it's always been for me, like, the more fun I have with it, the better I get, the more fun it becomes. And it's always just kind of been like an upward slope in terms of how much I'm enjoying the game and how well I'm playing it. And so recently started playing with Team USA, trying to make the roster for the 2022 games. So a couple of years away, but that's my next big goal. So so that's like my background spiel. But the bottom line is like, I didn't go to a blue chip program. I wasn't a top whatever recruit, but I just really liked playing the game, and I really liked playing it on my own and putting the hours in just individually, and it just kept paying off and paying off. So that's kind of my message off the bat to you guys, is that the cool thing about this sport is that it becomes more and more fun the better you get. And if you enjoy it, you'll find yourself doing it in your free time all the time. So it kind of just like creates this cycle that's really cool.
Matt, what age did you start playing the game?
So I started playing pretty young. I was probably in third grade when I started playing. But with that being said, I always played like 3 or 4 sports growing up.
Yeah.
So I never really like focused on lacrosse too much until high school.
Mhm.
And so like I started playing in third grade, but I don't think I was that skilled for a good bit.
What other sports did you play growing up?
I played football, basketball, and baseball
Mhm.
growing up. So I kind of like, my parents were the type that would just sign me up for everything, and I was always having fun playing. So it was never about like specialization or anything like that. It was just like, go have fun with your friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matt, you talked about like that you got better playing on your own, and as a defenseman, I wonder like how you did that. What was it in particular you think you did that had you get better than everybody else?
Yeah. So I think there's 2 aspects to that. One is that like, despite being a defender, like that doesn't mean that your stick skills don't translate to your on the field capabilities as much as offensive players. Like obviously it's important for offensive players to have a great stick, but the better your stick is as a defenseman, just translates to way more impact that you can have on the field. So even from just playing wall ball, like just, you know, skipping the ball off at weird angles and stuff, you can get really good at picking off passes or at handling like garbage around the crease. And each of those plays for a defensive player, like if you think about a lacrosse game as a defender, you really get like maybe only like 5 or 6 opportunities to change the play, to like have an impact where it's like you're going to pick off a pass or you're going to pick up a big ground ball that ends a possession. And those plays come in a flash. And so the best players maybe make 5 out of 6 of those. The worst players make 0 out of 6 or 1 or 2. So the the difference isn't that big in terms of like capitalizing on those opportunities, but the impact that you can have on the game is huge. So I think first of all, like having a good stick allows you to make a lot of those plays that can have a big impact. And then secondly, I benefited a lot from playing other sports. I think basketball is like one of the best things you can do as a defensive player in lacrosse, just because so much of it is pick play. It's about helping on the backside, understanding spacing, understanding if your guy is a shooter or if he's doesn't have a jump shot. That's like the same as lacrosse. Like, you know, is my guy a guy that's going to rip the ball from 14 yards, or can I slough in and help defensively? So I think that as important as it is to have stick skills, it's equally, if not more important, to have sense for team defense and just athletically understand the concepts that go into offense. So I benefited a ton from playing other sports, playing basketball, playing football, developing some physicality. But that's kind of how the basketball end is more team oriented, but that was just wall ball and ground balls and shooting all kind of made me feel more confident on the field.
Great. Should we open it up to the players, see if anybody has any questions for Matt?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you guys got? John, I know John's got a question if he's got his Archer shirt on. I know he came prepared.
I guess I had a couple questions. The biggest one I think is like, if you're having, like you talked about how there's only like a couple opportunities you get to impact a game and stuff. And like if you're having a bad game, your team's struggling, you need to make like that big play. Like what do you do mentally to kind of get yourself out of a slump?
Yeah, man, that's such a good question. Because that's like, I mean, how many defensive guys have felt that before, where it's like maybe you got a tough matchup or you're just not comfortable with who you're covering and you haven't played that well that day. Like, how do you turn it around? That was something that took me a while to figure out, because I was always of the mindset of like, you make a mistake, like I'm gonna more than make up for it on the next play, but that really doesn't work defensively, right? Like mistakes like taking risks lead to bigger mistakes, and it just kind of compounds on the whole thing. So anytime I'm having like a really bad game, I try to take a deep breath and like understand that the next play I make isn't going to completely reset, my performance, and just focus on making every small play. So like hitting singles and taking less risks actually is how you're going to climb out of a hole. So anytime I feel myself like playing poorly, my instinct is telling me like take a huge risk and make it all back on the next play. But it took me a while to get over that and realize that actually the best way to put together a good game out of a bad start is to just chip away and just make some good small plays and then build up and be ready for those big risks that you can take. But don't try to make it all back on the next play. Just kind of hit some singles, build some confidence back up, and get yourself out of it. Who's got another question? Reed, I feel like I could tell you were ready. You had the mute button triggered.
Yeah, I do. What is something that we can do to get better as lacrosse players?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've actually been doing a lot is I probably should have mentioned this earlier when John asked, but I've always really liked the agility ladder. So I've found that like, the best defensive players are also the guys that have the best footwork and can change direction really quickly. And the agility ladder in my mind is like, it's such a simple tool. And for those of you guys that just don't have one at home, it's as simple as just like measuring out 10 yards or 10 paces and just take tape and put it down on the sidewalk or the driveway or whatever you got. And then there's like endless videos on YouTube of different types of drills you can do with that. But the better your footwork is, it's applicable across any sport. But really in lacrosse, it's like, especially if you're a defensive player trying to stay with people, then all of your footwork is just reactive kind of agility. So I really like the agility ladder. I try to do that like 3 times a week, especially like in the season, just keep your feet warm and feel quick that way. But agility ladder, wall ball are kind of like my 2 go-tos outside of like, typical strength training, stuff of that nature. Alex, what do you got? You got a question? No question. Virendra?
Well, I started off as playing a midi, so I'm just wondering, like, for you, like, were you always a pole, or like when did you make that transition? And have you also like played any other positions through your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started out playing midfield, but as I was saying to Shep earlier, I never really like took the time to build up my stick skills when I was younger. I was playing a bunch of different sports, so I couldn't catch and throw that well. I was one of the tallest guys on the team, so they said, "Here, we got the solution." They just handed me a long pole and they said, "Just go whack people." So I've been a defenseman since like 6th grade, and I've always like tried to mess around in summer league with the short stick. It's so much fun, but I think I've always had the mindset of like a defensive player. Like I get the most satisfaction out of like trying to stop somebody from scoring or take the ball off of them. Very antagonistic mindset, but that's kind of my enjoyment on the lacrosse field. So I think it's good to play every position if you guys can, if you have the opportunity, like, in a pickup game or whatever, like mess around. But yeah, I think being balanced is definitely creates the best lacrosse players.
Yeah, sorry, I actually do have a question. So you said you weren't really like a highly touted prospect coming out of high school. So what was the college recruitment process like for you?
Yeah, so it was pretty interesting. I didn't play club or anything until my junior year of high school, and so I had received like no interest from colleges, a couple like D3s and stuff, but I didn't take like the traditional path in that all my teammates had been playing club for years and years, but I never really saw the need for it. I wanted to spend my summers playing other sports and doing that sort of thing. So I played with Trilogy Lacrosse, which is a club program in New Jersey, and I was fortunate enough that the guy who runs that is Ryan Boyle, who you guys may recognize from the PLL games. He does the commentating, but he was one of the greatest players of all time. He played professionally, played at Princeton, and so he had a lot of connections to colleges, to college coaches, and so I played on that team, and he really just enjoyed watching me play, and he reached out to a couple of his friends at different schools, and one of them being UPenn, and convinced the coach to come watch one of my games, and then that was kind of it from there. Was able to get an offer to go play there, and went and did, and kind of didn't look back after that. But definitely one of the more, like, talking to other people, a bit of an unorthodox path, and I don't know how easy to replicate it would be. I think I got tremendously lucky, but yeah, I think all the recruiting happens in a million different ways, and mine was definitely not by the book. It was a good question.
So you talked about other sports you play besides lacrosse, baseball and basketball, and I've always thought that basketball in particular is really good for defensive players to play because of the positioning. Do you find like pickup basketball is like the perfect place for you to like work on your defensive skills?
Yeah, 100%. That's like what I do in the off season, in a typical off season, to stay in shape. Like I hate conditioning. I can't stand running sprints and stuff. And so my conditioning throughout the off season to stay in shape is to go play pickup basketball at like Tompkins Square Park. I don't know how many of you guys ventured over there, but that's pretty physical basketball, and there are some really good players there too. And so I'll go down there and I'll go figure out who the best player is, and then I'll just go guard them like the whole day. And my goal is like, obviously I'm trying to have fun and score buckets and everything, but my goal will be like, can I stick with, like, this guy's really quick, he's really skilled, can I stick with him? Can I shut him down? And it's like the best training I could possibly do for the PLL season, because it's like all the same kind of movements. In basketball, somebody that's driving on you, it's almost like they've got a stick in their hand with the ball. It's a similar kind of concept and movement. And then off-ball play is like identical to lacrosse. You've got screens, you've got to help backside, you got to defend passing lanes. So it's like playing pickup basketball, no matter if you guys are playing for a high school team or just playing at the park. But I've always found that tremendously helpful for lacrosse, and I always use it to get ready for the season.
Great, and that's a fun way to work on your skills, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess what you're saying after watching The Last Dance is Dennis Rodman would be a great D-Paul.
Yeah, Dennis Rodman would be phenomenal. Him and Scottie Pippen. Like,
Yeah.
You guys see the clip. I don't know if you guys are all caught up, but like the clip of Dennis Rodman picking up Magic Johnson full court. Like, that's like, I'm not picking up anybody full court because I don't want to get in a fight at Tompkins Square Park, but that's the kind of defense that I'll try to play, because it's so similar to lacrosse. Like, if you're going out to pressure somebody, it's the same thing as picking them up full court. And I actually watch a lot of like basketball clips. Like, I watch a ton of Kawhi Leonard tape, just because the way he plays is so similar, where like he'll throw a reach right at the beginning of somebody's move to get them off kilter, or to kind of like change their path. Like, every offensive player gets the ball and they've kind of got a plan for what they're going to throw at you. Kawhi Leonard likes to throw a reach in there in the beginning just to disrupt their whole game plan. And I see that like so similarly in lacrosse. I'll try to throw a poke at the beginning of a dodge just to like completely catch the guy off guard. Sometimes you can take the ball away, but most of the time it's like you just let them know, like, okay, like my whole plan is kind of disrupted now. I got to think of something on the fly. And so I watch a lot of like Kawhi Leonard. Patrick Beverley's another good guy to watch tape on. But you can pick up so much from lacrosse. So much from basketball that applies to lacrosse. And I think it's really cool to understand like the overlap between multiple sports, and look at the guys that are the best at their position in that sport, and try to figure out like what makes them really good.
Matt, you're like the Steve Nash of the PLL. I played soccer, and there are fields in the Lower East Side, not too far from Tompkins Square Park, where I would play pickup soccer, and Steve Nash would come down and play soccer in the league.
No way.
And he would say the exact same things that you are, which is, soccer, like basketball, like lacrosse, all have, even though you're playing with your feet, the footwork and the touch and kind of just the basic strategies of give and goes, and the change of direction are all very similar. So
yeah, the principles are the same. Like, even you think about like hockey, like an odd man rush is very similar concepts to like a lacrosse fast break. Like all the sports are really similar, and I think it's always been fun to try to figure out like what makes them successful in a different sport, and see if it's been applied. Because that's the other cool thing about lacrosse. Like, it's not really been in the national spotlight. It's not something that you make millions of dollars doing. So people haven't really like honed in on all of the details the same way they have like NFL and MLB. You have all these like advanced analytics and people thinking about it all the time. But lacrosse is kind of cool because it's like everybody's sort of figuring it out as they go, and you see guys come up with new stuff all the time, and that doesn't really happen in many other sports.
Matt, we got a question from our chat here from Chris saying, were you still playing multiple sports even in high school?
Yep. Cool. So I played football and basketball in high school, and I kind of loved all three sports pretty evenly. But lacrosse was the one sport that I kept getting better at. Football was kind of a plateau, but still a lot of fun. And basketball, is always going to be a fun sport, but I don't know. There's something about spending hours and hours cooped up in a gym that some people really love, and I kind of prefer to be out on a field somewhere.
What position did you play in football?
In football, I played receiver, so I was we played. My high school was really small. We had 400 kids total in it, so we had about 50 kids on the football team. So we all played both ways. So I played receiver and linebacker.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How would you get your name out there to do in colleges and stuff?
Yeah. So this is Darren. We don't get your video here. You're one of the only guys that came to the.
I'm a little nervous.
Nervous?
Come on, with a PLL.
He does have the PLL logo. You got to give him credit.
I like
logo.
the PLL logo. All right. Well, maybe if I answer the question well enough, he'll flip this video on.
God damn.
I think that it's as I've always felt that it's a really difficult thing to navigate, coming from a high school that's not so different from you guys, where it's our program was created in 2004. So when I was in high school, I graduated in 2011. So we were still a brand new program too. And I've always felt that lacrosse is the kind of sport where the recruiting system as it's set up right now, it's difficult for guys at schools like ours to really get noticed without going to a million showcases and playing club teams and stuff like that. So I would say that the best thing that you can do is get some film of yourself and try to send it out to as many coaches, and you never know. The most important thing you can do, the most important thing that helped me out was having good grades. So that's right off the bat, if you can talk to a college coach and you can say, hey coach, I've got a 3.8 GPA, and that's your icebreaker. You get their attention with the GPA. You're somebody that would be a benefit to have on the team from an academic standpoint. B, you'd be a benefit to have in the locker room because you're probably somebody that works hard and is diligent and takes care of their stuff. And those two things are catch a coach's attention, just because they're this is the kind of guy that I want, and he's immediately off the bat going to be somebody that I can get into my school easily, and I don't have to worry about what our collective GPA of the team is going to be. So I think that most important table stakes is your GPA's got to be solid, or it's got to just be in a place where it shows that you're a hard worker and you can have that conversation with coaches. And then B, I think just reaching out to all these guys, all these coaches, and don't be afraid to cold email somebody. If you do it professionally and you show that you're somebody who takes this seriously, people will respect that. And don't ever feel like you're you're bothering any of these coaches. If you would be an asset to their team, then you're doing them a favor by reaching out and seeing if you can play for them. So have confidence in yourself, reach out to these coaches, do it in a professional manner that kind of represents yourself well, and see where it takes you. But I think it would get you more than a lot of people think it would.
Hey, Matt, this is Matt Levine. Any thoughts about players, especially from schools that you were talking about, like your own and so forth, picking out carefully schools that they're very interested in and trying to go to those schools' prospect days? Some of them
100%. Yeah. I think that That's a great segue, and it kind of reminded me of another piece that I would offer is be really focused with the schools that make sense for you and that you want to go to, and hone in on those ones and go to their prospect days. Maybe go to a game in the spring and introduce yourself to the coach. Like, the more narrow and focused you can be about that list, the more beneficial or the more impactful and effective you're going to be in getting in touch with those coaches. So prospect days are huge. Like, for me, anytime I had an opportunity to like speak to a coach, I knew that I could get their attention more than a highlight film would, or more than, you know, a random club game that I was playing in was going to get their attention. I knew if I walked up to them and shook their hand and said, "Hey, I'm Matt. I'm a sophomore at Glen Ridge. I have this GPA and I really want to play at your school," that's going to get you way further than a highlight tape ever would. So I do think that any chance you have to be in person with the coaching staff that you want to play for is a huge opportunity, and those prospect days can be a perfect example of that.
One question here from chat is what motivated you the most to keep going?
That's a good question. I think for me, like, I've always, like I kind of alluded to in the beginning, like I've always been like at whatever level I was at, I was always kind of the low man starting out. And I really, one of the things I've kind of like recognized about myself is that I really enjoy the rise up. So like, once you get to the top of whatever your level is, so like in high school, you know, I was the scrub freshman on the team, then I earned some playing time, then I started making some plays in games, then you're one of the leaders on the team. Like, when I got to that stage, I was like, all right, cool, what's next? Like, where can I be the next scrub and work my way up? And so I got that in college, and I got that professionally, and now my goal is to insert myself into the USA roster and one day be the leader of that team. And so that's like, that's what always kind of keeps me motivated and really excited to work on my own and get better, is that there's always like another level. So never feel like you're the big fish in the small pond and that's good enough for you. Like, look for the next pond, the bigger one. And just, I think that that's so enjoyable. And if you kind of have that mindset, you'll just find yourself climbing levels and levels and levels and becoming better and better everywhere you go. And so I realized that in college and then in professional, and I was like, all right, now let's get really focused on that. Like, I like wrote it down on a piece of paper. Like, I want to make the USA team. I want to start for the USA team. I want to be the captain of the team. And that's the kind of like approach that you want to write it down and say it. And then all of a sudden you start working and it starts happening, and you get really, you can get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So that's what keeps me going.
I like what you talked about your goals. You're very specific about what that goal is, because sometimes it's, my goal is to get better. That's kind of a very broad goal, but to say I'd like to be on this team or the captain of that team or whatever, that's a little more real. Like, that's something you can actually work towards.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. That's like, that's something I believe a lot in. And I'm not one of those guys that's like really studying a lot of like motivational stuff. I kind of just see what works for me and feed into that a little bit more. But one of the things that I really found helped me a lot was like visualization, and like just trying to picture what certain things look like that I want to achieve, or like positions that I want to be in. And so when I think about the things that I was just saying, like, you know, making the team, starting on the team, like I've done a good amount of thinking on that and visualizing and picturing it. So like, when I say the words to you guys, in my head is like the image of me with like a USA jersey on, or of our team holding up the trophy at the end of the season. Like, I believe a lot in the, like, being really defined with what you're trying to accomplish and picturing it, trying to understand every little detail of it. And I think it just goes that much further into like making it a reality, and it can push you and it can make you feel like you're you're gaining on it as it becomes more and more true. But that's a great point. Like I definitely find myself getting really detailed with like what my goals are, even like approaching a game. Like I try to picture every outcome of the game, what it looks like. Are we up by 5? Are we down by 5? How do we come back and win? And then you hit the game and you're like, all right, I've already imagined every which way this game could possibly go. And you see what victory looks like in your head. And then, you know, more times than not, I just find that it ends up happening that way.
Awesome.
That's very wise. I've heard some of the best golfers talk about the visualization piece of each shot in each situation that they're in, and the same can apply to lacrosse. The same can apply to the classroom. If you visualize, to Matt's point, if you can visualize yourself being in every situation, and practicing it, you know, like being on the wall and practicing catching a pass that may not be a perfect pass. When you get when you find yourself in a game situation, you've already done that. Your body already knows how to adjust to make that catch that may have been, you know, down at your feet, right? And so I think that's really a good point. From the small to from a very small thing to the bigger picture.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And like, I don't know about you guys, I'm definitely one of those people that like, I can get really nervous in a big moment or in like uncertainty and chaos. Like a lot of times I'll get nervous and not really do what I want to do. And so I found that like, that's a really good way of combating that. Like if you're picturing all of the possible scenarios, then you're kind of like getting reps in what that would be like if it actually happened. And so I've found that like the more I picture it and imagine like every possible angle of the play, by the time the play comes, I'm a lot calmer because I'm like, all right, like, you know, I thought about this situation and I'm ready for it.
Great.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Do you think lacrosse helped you in getting a job on Wall Street and with Bank of America Merrill Lynch?
Yeah, so I should have maybe continued the story a little bit more, but so I graduated college and I worked on Wall Street at Bank of America for a couple of years. And then I actually, with the birth of the PLL, I actually thought, you know what, I want to try to play lacrosse full time and see how high I can go within the sport. And so I actually quit my job a little over a year ago to play full time. And I work with Deemer Class, who plays for the Chaos. He played at Duke a couple years ago, but we built kind of like an online platform that I shared with Shep a little bit. But it's got a ton of instructional stuff on there that you guys should check out if you get some free time. But from that point on, like I just kind of like realized how much I enjoyed lacrosse and wanted to see it through. So the Wall Street life was a good couple of years, but certainly a lot happier where I'm at now than then. But to answer your question, Reed, I think that it can, like athletics in general, can build a lot of good relationships and kind of create a really strong network for you, whether it be your teammates or your other classmates that are student athletes. And so between that network, I was able to like get an understanding, like talk to some guys that worked on Wall Street that I played with, or talk to other student athletes that worked at the companies that I wanted to work for. And you can get some good insight, some good warm introductions to people. So I definitely think that like playing sports in college definitely helped me on that path to getting a job afterward. But I'd also think that I'd also say that like just playing in a structured team and playing lacrosse in college, playing any college sport forces you to really work a lot harder than I would have if I was just a student. and that was like tremendously helpful when I got to my job, just in terms of like balancing time, really grinding some weeks. So it paid dividends in a lot of different ways, but it was definitely helpful in my like adjustment to professional life.
Yeah, if I might add to that, Matt, I think Bank of America prospective people that are looking to hire for their companies, when they see athletics on the resume, especially Division 1, 2, 3, you've committed to a sport, and it shows that you can juggle, the priorities of being a student with the demands and priorities of playing on a team in an intercollegiate sport. And I think that's a big factor in why often people will interview the athletes as well as looking at their GPAs and what they've done academically.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have another question, like pertaining to recruiting that we were kind of talking about, and like emailing coaches and stuff. Like, if you don't really have tape, like recent game tape and stuff that kind of shows who you are as a player, is it still worth it to kind of like do coaches kind of discount that if you don't have that kind of tape? And like, what, because we're kind of running out of time with Corona and all that, and like of like good times to like play and stuff, and it's kind of going to be like the fall is going to be like our last chance. Like, what would you recommend in terms of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's definitely like a tough situation where I think a lot of college coaches are going to have to, like, you're going to be in the same boat as many college recruits, and so college coaches are going to have to alter how they go about evaluating people. So it's a little bit of a new frontier in terms of like how you replace this season of game film with something else. So I would like, I don't think it's a crazy idea to film yourself like running through some drills and stuff and sending that to a coach. Don't kill me if that's the craziest idea you've ever heard, but I think that the point is that a lot of high school players are going to be trying to get recruited without any game film from this past season. And so you're going to have to rely on a lot of other things to prove your value. So I think that like potentially sending in some film of you running through some drills would certainly give a coach an idea of your athleticism and your skill level. But more so kind of the greater point is going to be that you're going to have to rely on the things that are more off the field important. So it's going to be that much more important that your academics are in line. It's going to be that much more important that you can talk to the coaches and carry a conversation and be somebody that presents themselves well. Those things are gonna take a front seat here to the game tape. So I think definitely make sure the next time you get on a field that it's being filmed in some capacity, but I think that more so like all the other stuff is going to matter a lot more for all you guys trying to get recruited based on this lost spring season.
Got something to add there, John, because I know your coach well. I think at where you played, Hunter, I think your coach could also help you connect with some of the colleges and college coaches that you're looking at. I think he'd speak well of your play, and I think he could definitely be a big asset for you. And that goes with everybody else. Your coaches are, really care about you as a student athlete, and if you plan, an approach at the different schools, I think they'd be tremendous assets. Coach Ted, what do you think?
Did you ask me a question, Matt?
Yeah, Ted. Yeah, I was just making a point about John McCormick said that if you don't have game film, how are we going to communicate, our to college coaches, especially? And I said, rely on your high school coaches to try to help you make the connections, because they would probably know you the best.
Absolutely. And, this is my first year at Brooklyn Tech, and I would lean heavily on me personally, on Dave Herman, who I think is on this call, because he's been the assistant at Tech for a few years and has reached out and has relationships with coaches. And that's something that I will be getting involved with. I know that he took a couple players on some summer camp tours last summer where they were able to, like prospective camps, I guess you would call them, for college coaches. Dave, if you're still here, maybe you can chime in on that one. But listening to Matt, it sounds like that's a great idea. I think shooting tape of yourself, going through drills, shooting, seeing your footwork, and being sort of resilient and emailing and calling and just, it's okay to bother coaches, and it's okay. It shows you're interested. It shows you care. It shows you're passionate. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're not going to respond to you. And so what? And you move on. And it's a little bit like cold calling. You finally, someone is going to return your emails and return your calls. And it may be a great fit. You just don't know. But it's, that's how I feel about it.
And the landscape, the college landscape to play lacrosse on the Division 1, 2, and 3 level has expanded tremendously. So I'm a huge proponent of. I mean, it's a great time to be looking at colleges throughout the country. I mean, when I was applying to the colleges, it was really just a Northeast game, an East Coast game. Now the landscape has changed tremendously. So yeah, there's a lot more options out there, and I think I always encourage. I have nieces and nephews that are going through the same process that you all are now, and I tell them how lucky they are that they can be looking at schools in California or Colorado or Texas. I think we need to have an open mind as to be 1 or 2 or 3, but also the geographic location too.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting was it kind of got talked about a little bit at the end of the last PLL season, but they did the rankings of the top 50 players in the PLL, and then they cross-referenced that with Inside Lacrosse's top 100 recruit list, and they try to see how many of the top 50 PLL guys were top 100 recruits or top 20 recruits or whatever. And the overwhelming majority of guys were not top 100 recruits or top 50 recruits.
Amazing.
And now they're the best players in the world. And I think that kind of was in my opinion, it was a wake up call for college coaches to get a little bit more thorough with their recruiting and have a wider lens of who they're looking at. Just because, maybe going after the hotbed program players, it doesn't necessarily give you the best shot at winning or getting the best players. So I think that if you guys feel that you would be an asset to a program, that a coach would benefit from having you on the team, then you should absolutely feel confident enough to pester them and bug them, because in the long run, you're doing them a favor. So don't ever feel self-conscious. If you're truly and honestly feel that you will bring a benefit to their program, then keep annoying the crap out of them until they let you onto the team.
Okay. Yeah, I would also say, if you do pick a school you like, make sure you do your homework before you reach out to the coach. Find out about the school, find out what's great about the school, talk about what you like about it, because if you just have a general blanket, they're going to realize you're sending that email to a bunch of coaches. But if you're specific about, I love this school because I love upstate New York, I love, whatever those things might be that you love about that school and about the coach or about the team, that helps.
I like the offense that you guys run, like, drop a tidbit about that. Like, there's plenty of ways that you guys can demonstrate value over an email that I don't think a lot of high school students really recognize.
I got a quick question for you.
Yep.
I mean, it seems like you've played defense against a lot of people since you played for a long time. What makes a good matchup, would you say? Like in terms of the attackman or midfielder, like what makes them hard to kind of play against?
Yeah, so I think that like the one word answer would be like predictability or unpredictability. So the most difficult guys to cover are the ones that you really don't have a sense for what they're about to do. So that comes from like being ambidextrous and being as comfortable going to your right as your left. And it also comes from having a number of different moves in your bag. So like one of the best guys at that is like, if you guys watch Rob Pennell play, he's got a really balanced right and left hand, and he's got a number of different moves in his repertoire when he gets to different spots on the field. So for me, like I've always been of the mindset of like, the more tape I can study on a guy, like the better chance I'll have at knowing what he wants to do before he even gets the ball. And so the more that you as an offensive player can develop an arsenal of different moves, and the more comfortable you are and like indifferent you are going right or left-handed, can make it really, really difficult for a defensive player that's trying to limit you to like one or two moves. Like Jack, if I know that I watch film on you and you really like to go to your right hand and then inside roll, well, it's like, all right, well, I might go out and cover you and completely take away your right hand to begin with. So if you're a player that is competent going to their left, like they have a plan for if they get their right hand taken away, then you'll probably score against me. But if you're somebody that's only worked on that right-handed dodge to an inside roll, then when I take it away, you're kind of helpless and you're not going to be very effective. So the more like polished and balanced guys are, the more unpredictable they are. And the more unpredictable they are, the harder they are to cover. That makes sense?
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool.
Any other questions out there from guys?
Yeah, I had one.
Go ahead.
What do you think is the best quality to have as a lacrosse player?
That is a good question. The best quality to have, I think kind of just like you're a dedicated player. So you're really diligent about your craft, and you're focused and honest with your strengths and weaknesses. Just because, like I just said to Jack, like, and I've said to you guys, probably 5 times over the course of this whole thing, but lacrosse is such an interesting game because you can really make yourself a better player on your own at any time of the day without the need for any teammates or any goals or whatever. And so the guys that I see that are consistently the best players on their team or the best players in their league are all the guys that are really dedicated to improving. And they don't stop until every weakness is turned into a strength. And so I think that that's probably indicative of just the way the sport of lacrosse is played and how much better you can make yourself on your own. That those guys, like you look at like Tom Schreiber, like he's a very good athlete, but I wouldn't, you see him walking on the street and you're not blown away by like how, huge he is or how fast he looks or anything. But what makes him the best player in the world is that he can throw a laser beam pass right on the money with both hands from every different angle. He's just got such confidence in his stick, and his game really has no weaknesses. So he's super dedicated on eliminating weaknesses, and I think that that's what makes him a really good player.
2 questions from chat here. One is, you touched on academics and athletics. How do you balance the two and adequately manage your time?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. That's I think that's the burning question for like all student athletes, but it always feels like in college like you're constantly exhausted or you're constantly busy and you got a lot going on. But I think that the key is that you just start to develop skills for time management, and you start to understand how to prioritize different things and how things get done. So it's almost like baptism by fire in terms of like honing those time management skills and just getting better and better at it as you go along. So for me, like my freshman fall of college was my weakest semester academically. And then my best semester was my senior spring. So it was just a testament to like, just you push yourself to a new limit. Like you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation and then you just figure it out. So like, I would say that time management comes a lot from like putting a lot on your plate and not getting discouraged, and instead of getting discouraged, thinking like, all right, how am I going to do this? And then you start to naturally figure out what works for you. What are some good strategies? Like how do you eliminate procrastination, stuff like that. But I would just recommend like taking on as much as you feel a little bit uncomfortable and then work your way through that. And then, the next time you get more on your plate and you just become better and better at it.
Excellent answer. I would also say from my own sons who played in college and my college experience, my best grades was during the season because there was no time to like get distracted. So you had to go right from practice to the library and then home. So it's always that time when you're kind of like, what am I going to do next when you actually kill 2 hours that you could have done something really good with. So
yeah,
maybe lacrosse helps in some ways.
Yeah.
One question for you is any tips on how to increase your IQ in lacrosse?
Yeah, I'd encourage you guys to like check out the resources on the internet. Like there's just so much awesome lacrosse knowledge out there on Twitter and YouTube and even Instagram. But without sounding like I'm really like promoting what I'm working on too much, like I joined Deemer with the first class stuff because Deemer and I are both lax rats that really love watching film and understanding the game. And like I said, with the like Kawhi Leonard stuff.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but say the name of the company again so that everyone knows it.
It's First Class Lacrosse.
Great.
So we've got like a Twitter and an Instagram, and then there's a website with a bunch of videos on there too.
Really good stuff, guys. Really good stuff.
But it's been fun. It's been fun for me because Deemer and I are both the same way, where we really want to understand like the details of the game, and we think that even like we need to continue to grow our lacrosse IQ. So like all this stuff that we put out there is stuff that we're learning like a week before we make the videos or whatever. So I'd encourage you guys to just search around the web, but that's a great place to start. And you can find your way through a lot of the lacrosse Instagram and Twitter just by going on our page and seeing other stuff that we reshare and whatnot. But that's a pretty good starting point to learn a lot about the sport. And you guys can always like what I enjoy about it is like people will hit us up with questions about different aspects of the game, and we love answering them. So if you guys ever think of things and see a clip and want to understand why it's a certain way, like you just DM the clip to me.
I mean, talk about an era of direct communication. It is unbelievable that you could ask Matt a question tomorrow if you wanted to. If assuming that you all have Instagram on your phones. I know some of you follow our page. I'm sure you follow the Archers and the PLL, and it's just amazing how you can communicate with a professional player very easily. So take advantage of that. Really, I mean, you're living in a great time to be able to see the best in the world deliver really well done and well thought out drills. So take advantage of that.
Yeah, you probably can't get Tom Brady to tell you how to throw a 40-yard pass.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I'm curious about this question from chat was, can you recall your most memorable moment in a game during your high school years?
That is a really good question. I think my most memorable moment, and this is maybe not my most like happiest memory, was in like I think it was like a county final or a state semifinal or something. We were going to double the ball, so it was like the clock was running down. I think we were losing the game, and we had to get the ball back. So me and another defenseman are lined up off of a dead ball, at the midline, trying to corner somebody to take the ball off of them. And so right when they blow the whistle, the guy goes to split the double team, and I threw like a really like wild check, and I missed entirely, like whiffed, and the stick hit the ground like as I'm running in that direction, and like I guess like pole vaulted me in the stomach. And so that's like one of the most burned into my memory plays from high school, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best one. Have you guys ever seen those videos are like they'll post them on Sideline Swap and stuff sometimes, but you'll see a defenseman like miss a check and then like, launch himself off of his own deep hole. And I always cringe whenever I see those, thinking back to that play.
Ouch. Sounds like it hurts.
Yeah. I had like the like STX butt imprinted in my stomach for like 2 days after.
That's why you get epic.
What's that, Darren?
That's why you get epic gear.
Yeah. I like so Darren's talking about the gear that I use in the PLL, which is all epic. I don't know if you guys have seen any of their brand. They're like kind of new to the lacrosse world, but I like their stuff a lot. The guy who started it is from Long Island. He's a really good dude, and they make all the products in the USA. So I like those guys, like that brand. Good stuff.
Are there any other questions? We've taken a lot of your time here, Matt. So, oh wait, here's one. Have you ever become super emotional or even just angry during a game?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that it is a good question for defenders in particular, because, a lot of our job is to not mess up, not let somebody score. And if somebody's playing well, they're going to be scoring on you. And so I definitely find myself like it's totally normal to get really emotional in a game if you're not playing well or the game's not going your way, or if it's going really well and you're maybe getting your emotions too high. But that's natural if you care a lot about winning and about playing well and everything. That's going to happen. But learning how to deal with it has been something that's been a challenge for me always. I've always been super competitive and play with a lot of emotion, and a lot of times that really doesn't work well. And so that's been something that I'm like literally still dealing with. We played a game in the PLL last summer against the Redwoods. It was down in Washington, D.C., and we were losing the entire game, but we're chipping away. We're coming back. Game's about like 9-7 with like 5 minutes to play. And we're starting to play really well and put the pressure on to try to tie the game up. And somebody's carrying the ball over the midline on the Redwoods, and they do a spin move and their helmet pops off, and they didn't make any contact with anybody. And the refs blew the whistle and awarded the Redwoods possession. They said it was like an official's timeout. And I just about lost my mind. I knew like it should have been our ball. Like the kid didn't have his helmet buckled up, and we should have the ball and be going down to try to score and close the gap. And it was just like, it was a bad call, but it wasn't like a really impactful play on the game. And I just like lost my mind, and I'm like screaming at the referee, and I'm, completely unfocused on the next play. And there was a TV timeout. So we went to the sideline, and Drew Adams, who was our goalie, who's a great player and longtime professional, like all-world goalie. He pulled me aside, and he never really like says that much during the games at all. And he said to me, like, this is the weakest part of your game right now, is that you get way too worked up, and it takes your focus completely off the play, and you make a mistake. And he was like, if you want to become a great player, you have to learn how to control these emotions and recognize that you're getting really heated and getting really worked up, and try to calm yourself back down and just play the way you played the previous 3 quarters, and not get too worked up. So that like completely snapped me out of it. And I went back out on the next play, and we held a long stand and got the ball back and went down and scored, and then won the faceoff, went down and scored. And we ended up like, we lost the game in overtime, but we had a really great stretch defensively for the rest of the game. And I attribute a lot of that to Drew really snapping me out of it and telling me to calm down and just kind of like reduce my emotions for a little bit, because they had reached a level that was not good. It was going to result in risk taking and kind of like losing focus. So it's definitely a natural part of the game, but the more you can control it, and even if you can harness it, it can be a really powerful part of your game too.
Great answer. Great answer.
I got a question.
Yep.
Like, what was it, like, how were your emotions like your first game in PLL against Tacoma?
That's a great question. It was like, honestly, it was like Christmas morning, because it was like, it was the way I always hoped professional lacrosse would look. So we were playing in a big NFL stadium up at Gillette, the Patriots stadium, and the NBC broadcast team was all, set up, and there was a sky cam, and everything about it was really felt like what you see leading up to an NBA game or an NFL game. And it just felt really gratifying, where it was like, I always felt like all these guys that I played with at the professional level were truly experts of this awesome game. And so prior to that point, we had some ragtag years in the MLL of playing at small colleges, and like our broadcasts not really being the highest quality. The whole experience just didn't feel all that like rewarding. And so being up at Gillette, it was like, the word that came to mind was like, finally, like this is the way it should be, where all the stuff surrounding the game matches the same level of excellence that's going on the field.
Awesome. I think that's probably a great place to wrap it up. I think that's a great final answer there. Unless you have any burning final questions, guys.
And I just want to say, on behalf of CityLax, thank you so much for your time. I mean, we've enjoyed today. We've enjoyed your clinics, and hopefully we can get you back on the field with these guys as soon as the state lets us do that and you're able to do it. And what you've done for this game and giving back is just particularly impressive to me. So I want to thank you on behalf of CityLax and all the players that you've touched in New York City in your short time already working with us. So thank you for that. And also, I should let everybody else know that, we're working really hard to have programming available for you guys this summer if we're allowed to. So whether it's camps, whether it's pickup games, whether it's clinics, we're putting stuff together. We're planning for stuff. And so as soon as we get the green light, we'll be able to post that stuff. Shep will be posting it on our Instagram pages. And also, there were a lot of good questions about college and things like that. And we're working with a new company, with Billy Bitter, trying to come up with a way that he can actually help advise you guys about your academics, and also talk about the idea of how you find yourself playing college lacrosse. And he's built a company to do just that. So we're going to try and do a Zoom meeting with him and his company at some point in the not too distant future as well. So we're out there for you guys. And if there's anything else we can do, just let us know. But we're just thrilled to be able to, like I said, if we were a football program, it'd be nice to have Tom Brady talking about how to throw a football. But instead, as a lacrosse program, we have Matt and McMahon talking about how to play defense and how he got there. And so I just think as I'm seeing all these thanks coming up from chat, Matt, I can just tell you thank you very, very much for your time tonight. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me. And honestly, like I really, you guys can attest from how much Kyle, Tom, and I enjoyed the clinic earlier in the year. But it's really fun and reward. Like I enjoyed talking to you guys and seeing myself and you guys. There's a lot of similarities there, and so don't ever feel like I'm doing you guys a favor. I enjoy this as much as anybody else. So don't feel like you're bugging me. If you have any questions afterward, like Darian, Chris, you guys can attest that I'll always answer them. And I'm just happy to help in any way possible. It's cool to see you guys get into the sport of lacrosse. I think it's an awesome game. And if I can help in any way, I'm glad to.
Well, stay healthy and safe, everybody. And we'll be either seeing you on a Zoom or on the field soon.
Hopefully it's on the field.
Yeah, I vote for that too.
Especially you, Emerson. Can't wait to see you on the field.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much for taking the time tonight.
Yeah. Stay safe, guys.
Have a good rest of the night.
Nice seeing you again, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Here.